From Bella Vista Community Television, The City with Damon Wallace. The City with Damon Wallace, a program exploring the happenings in Bella Vista and our surrounding. And now, here's Damon.
Okay, and welcome to The City. I'm Damon Wallace. This show is primarily about what goes on around our city. We also have a couple of other neighboring towns, with Bentonville and Gravette. Our focus a lot of times will be with the elected officials or heads of departments to help keep the citizens of Bella Vista more informed about what's going on in local politics, or with certain things like street departments or the police department, fire department, things like that. So it's more of just to help you know what's going on in your community. Today, my guest is Ms. Carrie Perrien-Smith. She is one of the justices of the peace for Benton County. She represents the Rogers area, but as we know, Benton County covers all the area of Bella Vista also. So Carrie, good to have you with us today.
Thank you, Damon.
And so there's going to probably be some people watching that really don't know what a Justice of the Peace does. We've watched the old Andy Griffith shows, and the Justice of the Peace marries people. But we kind of use that a little differently here in Arkansas. So tell us what a Justice of the Peace does here.
Well, your quorum court is like your city council, only it's for the county. And the body of legislators that sit on the quorum court, and there's 15 of them, are your justices of the peace. Can they marry people? Yes, just like your mayors and other state officials, but most of our JPs don't even marry people. So our focus really is to manage the legislative affairs of the county and make sure that we are being wise stewards of the county money that our taxpayers pay into.
Okay, and so what are some of those departments that the JPs are actually over? I know they have a finance committee where budgets are submitted. What are some of those budgets?
Okay, so the sheriff's department in the jail is probably the largest budget. We have the assessor's office, we have the county clerk's office. We take care of the judges, the judicial branch, and make sure that they have what they need in terms of payroll, benefits, technology, which we're seeing roll into courtrooms now that are helping them to do virtual activities during this COVID shutdown and kind of continue their work. The prosecutor's office is one of the budget line items that we have. The road department is huge. Maintaining the hundreds of miles of road in Benton County, making sure that our bridges are updated and legal, and taking care of the right down to the chat roads.
Okay, and so how long have you been serving as far as Justice of the Peace?
This is my second year of my first term, and I'm still really in learning mode. I learn something new every day. Sometimes I'm surprised at what we don't hear that I thought as a Justice of the Peace and an elected official I would hear. So you kind of have to go dig for information sometimes when you're curious about an expenditure that is coming. You know, to be able to call the assessor's office and ask about that piece of technology that they're either retiring or upgrading, calling the sheriff's department and learning more about what they do out there, trying to figure out how we support our judicial branch of the county. You really just, and it's just trying to get names put together with faces, and I feel like sometimes I'm still doing that a little bit.
Yeah, it's so it's kind of, and it's a little hard because it's not a full-time position either, is it?
No, we get paid by the meeting. So if we don't meet, we don't get paid. So there's a budget for us. And so the nice thing under the COVID shutdown is that we had 3 or 4 meetings that we didn't meet. So that's money that the taxpayers didn't have to pay us. We still have to do our job. We are an outreach for the counties. And I'm a city JP. My district is squarely inside the city limits of Rogers. The people that live there are not worried about calling me if their road needs grading or they have a drainage issue. But if you live out in the county, and you have area out in the county as a JP, you are their first line of defense when they have an issue with planning problems or road problems. Road is probably the biggest thing. Security.
Now, I know with other branches of the government, like with state representatives or state senators, things like this, you kind of hear from people all over the area, not just the people that you represent. But so you may get a call from someone out, let's say in Garfield, or someone over in Gravette.
Right.
The JP that's assigned to them, they just represent a certain number of people. Is that right?
It's ideal if, like I do get calls because I am out in the community and I am willing to step out and be involved in other activities. I'm involved with a lot of business activities. And so sometimes somebody will say, I've got a problem and I'm over here in Gravette, but I called my friend and said, who do I talk to about this? And they said, well, I know a JP. And so I might be the first person that they call because the network connected me. But then at that point, I would turn that over to the JP for that district and ask them to look into it. But I really try to have that conversation and get to know as much as I can and kind of prepare them for that conversation with their actual JP.
Okay.
Now, when people ask about how do I affect something maybe that the quorum court is voting on, which there are very few of those kinds of issues out there, but if that were to happen, and I would tell you this is the same with any legislative body, every single person in that body has a vote. And you need to reach out to all of them. Contact all of them. Some of them are more engaged and interactive than others, but I guarantee you they're all reading your email or all listening to your phone conversation, or if you had to leave a voicemail. But every single one of them has a vote. I am in the city. I'm very interested in what happens for our volunteer fire departments, though, and I've had a chance to advocate for our fire departments in a way that no one else did. And, you know, get that second fire truck added back to the budget. Who would have thought a city JP would do that? Yeah. But it's something I'm interested in.
So since you are still fairly new at it, tell us about maybe one or two of the most impactful things that you've learned about being a JP, about representing the people.
Well, I think still learning my way around the budget is a lot more difficult than I thought. Learning how the process does seem kind of slow, but then we're meeting often enough that we could handle things in a quick issue if we had to. There's a lot of times you go into public service and think, I can really impact this, but at the end of the day, a JP is working shoulder to shoulder, you know, with other JPs. They're working with the county assessor. They all have their own budgets, their own departments, their own goals and objectives, and their own constituency. But I really thought it was important for us to really know how we take care of our employees that work for the county, because those are really the people that take care of everyone who lives, works, and plays in Benton County. And they're important and they're hard to replace. We live in a very difficult to hire the right people area. We have companies that are vying for the best and brightest. Not everybody goes into the kind of roles that would serve in a public service role, such as a police officer or the 911 area or the assessor's offices are very specialized. Okay. It's important that we protect them, help them be the best that they can be in that role, and be a great employer so that we are competitive in hiring. And that's hard when you're trying to be the best steward that you can be for,
yes, it is. Yeah.
For the taxpayer.
So if you have, let's say, a member of the public goes, I think I have this concern, maybe it's with the employees, maybe it's with the fire trucks or whatever it may be, and they go, I want to address the quorum court. How do they go about doing that?
Well, if for us or any other body, you know, decide where you live and figure out whether you're in the city or in the county or whether this is a county issue at all. And sometimes you just need to call the JP or call the person on the city council if you're in the city limits and talk to them about the issue and ask if they can help you advocate for this issue or how you get this problem solved. Because sometimes it really is, hey, my road washes out every single time we get a big rain. Well, that's a conversation to have with the road department to see how they can help you? And is that something that is a drainage issue that they really need to step in and intervene with, or is that
some more about contacting the various departments that may be over that,
Right.
rather than just going straight to the quorum court?
Right, and you know, if you had a global issue you wanted to speak to, we have public forums that are available for every single person that wants to come speak to us at the beginning of the meeting for 3 minutes. You do have a 3-minute limit. I am so missing that because I really enjoyed when people would come and speak their heart about an issue. But yeah, if you have an individual issue, you have an issue on your road, your sign is down, something like that, you'd probably reach out to your JP. Most people don't really know that though, unless they've done a lot of that. They'll call the county and they'll talk to that road department.
Okay, so I hear that there may be some updated discussion about the courthouse facilities.
Right, right. At the end of last year, we knew that we weren't going to get a tax increase to pay for a courthouse expansion. And so Judge Mooring came back to us and said, hey, I've got an idea. What if we did this? We can work within the reserves that we have, and we're in a really great rallying economy. And we think if all things go well, we have the money to do this without the, you know, it was a smaller version of, it wasn't going to be a new building, it was building onto the old building. And it was really going to be a good option. And I thought back then, this is a perfect scenario, and what if we have a natural disaster, or, you know, I mean, an ice storm, very simply. I didn't imagine that we would have COVID-19 that would change everything about our ability to create a tax base.
Okay. So in the foreseeable future, do you see a vote to increase the sales tax again, or property taxes or anything? Has that been discussed at all, or is that still something that's going to be in the future?
There's no discussion that I see coming about going back to the voters for a tax increase. Here's what is on the table right now, and we think this is going to go forward. We approved this last meeting to be able to take the money that we have and do a variation of this building. The question is whether we want to use all of our reserves, which I'm not in favor of, unfortunately. I'm a no debt person. I think we need to save our money, but the reality is we need to be ready for a natural disaster, an ice storm, a flood, a partial shutdown of our facilities, and having to spend more to prevent
it all
people
goes back to that budgeting, doesn't it?
It does, it does. So we're moving money around. I believe what we'll see is the need to take financing. And so financing is available to us. The good thing is the rate we're looking at for now is 2.64%, which is it's very good to borrow money. I'm not a fan of borrowing money. I don't want to borrow the whole amount. But I would really want to be able to keep from doing the, I would really want to be able to not take out debt. But I also want to make sure that our reserves are available to us for those emergencies that could happen.
Okay, well, we're going to take a little bit of a break here. We kind of up against a hard break, so we'll be back and we'll go over some more things with Justice of the Peace, Carrie Perrien-Smith.
You're watching The City. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Here's Damon and his guest.
And welcome back from the break. Again, I'm Damon Wallace with the city, and my guest is Miss Carrie Perrien-Smith, who's one of the justices of the peace for Benton County. So, Carrie, good to have you back here again. So on this part of the show, I want to focus on some of the more controversial issues that are affecting not only our part of Arkansas, but the U.S. as well, and get Carrie's kind of her take on some of it, being an elected official. So Carrie, we're starting to see now that a lot of the businesses are starting to reopen. There were some of them that were shut down by the governor, such as the hair salons and estheticians and nail salons, things like that, spas. I believe even dentist offices were closed down except for emergency cases. So a lot of those businesses are now able to open up, although in somewhat of a limited capacity. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, as we kind of go through this phasing into open, what is the challenging piece of this is that we are at our peak here in Northwest Arkansas. We went through, it seemed like we timed everything with what was happening in New York and some of the other hotbeds, New Orleans, where the COVID outbreak was just large right at first. Well, we didn't have a lot of cases, and now we've seen a huge spike in cases as we're reopening. And it's so unfortunate, and sometimes I don't feel like I'm getting all the information that I'd like to have about where the real risk is. Where are these cases being seen? And I would like more of that information, but even I don't have it. And I think that it's just a time for us to be aware of, taking, personal responsibility to make sure that we are not spreading it and then we are not getting it, so that we can be part of, and then maintaining a healthy lifestyle so that we can go on and continue to do our jobs and take care of our families and be a teacher and teach school.
Have you heard from many of the small business owners that have been impacted by this? I know the restaurants were some of the first ones that felt it because their lobbies were closed. They could do takeout, they could do drive-through. Have you heard from many of the business owners regarding any of this?
The restaurant owners were the ones that panicked, I felt like, the loudest. Not that everybody wasn't panicking, and I'm not really sure why we shut down licensed services so quickly and so thoroughly, because they get many, many, many hours of training on how to be safe and protect themselves from disease and spreading disease and all of those other things that can cause within the licensed professions. The restaurants, however, run at probably the lowest profit margin of any business. Mm-hmm. And they are on a shoestring as it is. And we had a booming economy, and there were businesses within Rogers even that were opening their business when the shutdown happened. And so they are running through their reserved resources that they had for their business. You had people that were really already kind of taking a little bit more financial risk with their business that didn't have a lot of operating capital.
Yeah, that does make it a lot more difficult when you don't have the extra resources, doesn't it?
Yeah, and some of the support, it was a little bit confusing for people to kind of rally and figure out how to get the government money that had been put out there for them. There was some fraud, and it did drain the resources, and people got it that didn't need it. And so it left some of these other business owners that had a very real need, were very much a part of our community as an employer and also a generator of sales tax.
Well, now, we didn't talk about this before. Are you aware of do you have any small business? I know you have your own small business. Mm-hmm. There are other small business owners that you network with all the time. Mm-hmm. Were there quite a few of them that received that payroll protection payout?
I felt like a lot did if they had certain types of businesses. Like for me, most of what I would be is probably classified as a gig economy. I'm a consultant, and so I don't have a lot of overhead. I didn't apply for any of that because I didn't need it. I'm in a couple of bands, and we lost 12 engagements, but because it's kind of our side thing, we didn't apply for that. We didn't need it. I am unclear whether our 1099 people maybe who run network marketing businesses, I don't know if they ever received anything other than the stimulus check. but they tend to run pretty shoestring
lean
type
also.
businesses as well. They don't have a ton of employees, if they have any. I mean, that's the thing, when we really dig in and understand what our small business community looks like, most small businesses have less than 2 employees. It's where you get into kind of these growing models where they've got one restaurant or they've got a beauty salon. They are organized all differently, and I'm not clear that all of them receive funds.
Okay, so going on to our next topic on that is, so we received word last week that there's a statue down at the Bentonville Square that has been controversial for a little while because it's actually one of our former governors here in Arkansas, but he was also a Confederate soldier, and that's the depiction there. We received word this last week that the Daughters of the Confederacy were actually going to move the statue. What do you know about some of that?
Well, I was as surprised as anyone to hear the announcement on Monday. So when they came out and said it's going to be moved, and the article didn't even really give a lot of details on when or where. I had heard some underground conversation, but never anything that I could classify as more than gossip or side talk or speculation. So I was as surprised as anybody. I always imagined there would have been a conversation among the quorum court but it comes down to who owns the property, who owns the statue, who has responsibility.
Who does own the property and own the statue?
I'm still seeing varying conversations about that. I believe that I hate to even explain this because I'm not 100% sure that we've got the end-all be-all. It's kind of like the story about the Confederate statue. This particular statue does not match the national narrative around getting rid of our Confederate statues. This was, it was meant to, there's different historical perspectives on it as well, but this was intentionally to honor a governor who was from our area that didn't want him necessarily to be honored, but he wanted all our soldiers that served and died to be honored in this. Okay. So it's hard when you've got competing narratives out there, and for me to sit here and go, I'm not comfortable myself saying exactly who owns it and who doesn't, because the story has changed and the speculation has changed. It depends who you're listening to. Even as a JP, sometimes it's hard. So there's still some questions being asked by JP Joel Edwards, who takes care of Centerton. He's asking questions about ownership, and he's dug into the topic a little bit more than I have. But anyway, we think in the fairly near future that will go to a private park that will really honor more of our soldiers. I don't have a lot of for sure information around that yet, but I would just, I look at that soldier and I see a veteran. Yeah. And I mean, when you go, I don't know if people know this, but the volunteers at the Peel Mansion, the Peel Mansion is haunted. And one of the ghosts is an African-American Confederate soldier. Yeah. And they see him a few times a year. I mean...
Yeah. Well, let's go on to another topic because we're almost out of time. So during the most recent protests against police, we had one in Rogers. There was one in Bentonville also. We didn't see any here in Bella Vista. But you went out to that one in Rogers, and so what were you trying to accomplish? Okay,
so the Monday protest was the first one, the Monday Bentonville protest, where there was, we don't do protests here, we do family events and farmers market. And there was so much firestorm around our communities. We saw the Nashville City building burned. Who would have ever expected that? I mean, I think we've seen some other hotbeds of activity around the country where they do have corrupt government and they do have real issues in their police departments and at their city level. There's real corruption out there around the country in these areas.
Yeah, we don't have a whole lot of those
things
happening here.
Our police departments and our sheriff's department train for these things, but until you're in the middle of it, you don't know really how you're going to react. They go through training just the same way our military personnel go through training, but until you're there, you don't know. And so I felt like there was a lot of fear there, and there frankly were. When you call something a protest, whether you put peaceful in front of it or not, it draws some people that are kind of the fringe organizations that may be more likely, there was real frustration that the Boogaloo Boys, that was the guy with the artillery belt and the Hawaiian shirt. There's a lot of conversation about them. We had conversations about, there's frustrations that we would have Antifa there. So among all of our peaceful protesters, and this movement was really locally focused on teens. The high school students were really mobilized to come out. So you had our children out there that you wanted to protect as well. So there was a lot of threats that were floating out there, and our city and county government just didn't know what was really real and what is just, we're trying to intimidate you and, to buckling under pressure or whatever. We didn't have anything that was really happening. And there wasn't, I don't believe, enough communication on the front end.
Yeah.
So
and that's it does take a lot of communication, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And there was, there's a lot of passion behind this movement. And literally we saw the Black Lives Matter movement spread internationally in just 3 or 4 days. Yeah. We went from, here was this incident, and we saw protests in the UK. So they got a lot of traction very fast, and I think it caught people off guard. But the thing about Bentonville and the other cities is that we do have diversity and we do value each other. And it was hard to watch people bring a national narrative that really wasn't true about our community. Are there bad police officers? Are there police officers who carry prejudice with them for whatever reason? Possibly. I don't know. That has never been, my focus was like, let's take care of people. Yeah, it's hard to know what's
in someone else's mind, isn't it? So.
Yeah. And so the lesson that I would tell you that, if anybody don't go looking for the video. It's not really my finest moment, and I don't think it's their finest moment either for the people who were attacking me. But here's the thing: I was able to stay respectful and I was able to listen. What I'm hearing is that we are no longer speaking the same language, and that's the thing that we have to focus on at this point. The Black Lives Matter movement is really about eliminating racism and police brutality. And a lot of times that is focused on people of color in other areas. I don't know if it's focused here, but if it is, we need to fix it. And so I went to the protest on Rogers because it was in my district, number one. And if it had been downtown Rogers, which isn't my district, I still would have gone because it's in my city. And these are my neighbors. And I didn't intend to speak. And a friend of mine said, hey, they asked for elected officials to come speak if they were here, or where were they? And he encouraged me, but I hadn't planned to, so I didn't have anything written on a note card. I hadn't thought through anything I was going to say. And this particular movement has some cultures and norms involved that you probably would want to honor that norm, even though it would be unfamiliar outside the movement. So there were some things you just need to understand sometimes that you don't have all the answers. But as an elected official, I took that chance based on the encouragement of my friend, and afterward I said, you threw me to the wolves. I didn't know that they really didn't want me to speak, and so, and maybe they didn't, but also there was a couple of things that I made a misstep on that really fueled it and started it kind of surfaced some feelings, I think. So, you go into that and you say, I'm here to lean into the conversation and to learn and to listen. And I think that's what we all need to do. We all need to lean in and listen so that we can learn. Now, another thing that I'm finding as well is I'm starting to lean in, and I will tell you this lean in thing and reaching out to people who've maybe not sent me a very nice email or a very nice note, is that I'm getting information that there's more that we need to hear. I believe that there's post-traumatic stress disorder that is tied up in some of these feelings, and this event has brought those out from decades ago. And I think there's going to be a chance for us to step in and ask questions and give people a space to tell their story so that they can heal. Because that's what I sense. There's not the healing that they really need and that they're asking for now.
Okay. Well, Carrie, I do appreciate you being here today. We want to thank all of our viewers. And again, if you have, I've said this just about every show, and that is if you have things you need to tell or want to tell your elected officials, they are there to hear you. They want to hear from you. There's many issues out there. They don't know which way that the constituents want them to vote on different issues or how to handle different issues. They need to hear from you. But for this episode of The City, we thank you, and everyone have a good day.
You've been watching The City from our studio in the highlands of Bella Vista. If you have topics you would like to see us explore, just let us know. Thank you for tuning in. This has been a production of Bella Vista Community Television.